Hi, I'm Micah Clark with the American Family Association. As you notice, our screen may look a little bit different today. I'm inviting Jeff Howard, Director of Communications, on with us today. Today's going to be a little different video. It's our last video regarding the Indiana General Assembly, which is wrapping up today. We're recording this on Thursday. I'm just saying that in case something changes. A few of the things I think are going to happen, I'm pretty certain of. But with these guys in the legislature, you never know, and it's not over until it's finally over. But on Thursday was the last day of the session, and it looks like they've got the budget and other things put together. And so I wanted to cover some of the issues that we're looking at, maybe backwards from today going backwards, because this week the big issue has been the Indiana State budget, House Bill 1001. And the House and Senate had differences of opinion on how to spend money in that $45 billion budget. That's 45, not 4.5. And so the biggest difference, I think, of our concern was the House passed a voucher plan for school vouchers that was almost universal. They raised it from family of four making $154,000 to $220,000, which would affect well over 90% of Hoosiers being able to qualify for a school voucher if they want to send their kids to a private school, a charter school, or another public school. So that is almost universal vouchers for Indiana. I think that gives parents more choices. And the House prevailed in that, Jeff. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, that's great.
The Senate cut it completely out. As you know, the Senate's been kind of a dark hole for us on a few things this year. I had a legislator tell me that the House is being proactive and the Senate's being reactive. And that's kind of true. But so one thing I thought you might want to know, though, 57% of our state budget goes to education. So that $45 billion, it's a lot. 47% goes to K through 12, and then 10% goes to higher education. So I have almost 6 out of $10 in the state budget go to education. What's interesting, too, is, let me see, I have a chart here. Since 2014, education spending on K-12 funding for public schools has increased 34%.
Wow.
And what do we hear from them? I mean, what do you hear?
They don't have enough money.
They will always hear they don't have enough money. Teachers' unions, it doesn't matter whether we raise it by 2% a year, 6% a year, it's never enough. And so it's just, we are spending significantly more than we did just 10 years ago, a third more than we were spending 10 years ago. And it's a lot of money going to schools.
Yeah, does that include, people are probably wondering, does that include the vouchers, the voucher programs, or is that just the ones that are designated to the public schools?
That K-12 funding is just the public schools.
Just the public schools. So they've gone up that much, and that does not include for all the people
Right.
that are out of the
Vouchers are a separate line item in that. This is just K through 12. And there's a couple different ways they compute this. It gets a little confusing. There's like an 8% increase in education funding, but you have a per pupil funding that's more like 5% over the next 2 years. And it's the funding formula, but because schools are funded by the state as well as local property taxes, which are not included in the state budget. And Jeff, as you know, we've talked a lot about property taxes this year, where they've gone up 10, 20, 25% in assessment values. And a lot of that money goes to schools. So some things you may not think of, though, just in the reference to that pie chart, 18% of the budget, which is a huge chunk, the second largest chunk to education, is Medicaid. And then Health and Human Services is 8%. Public safety is only 2% of our state budget. And then corrections, which I guess you could call public safety, but it's a separate line item for prisons and that type of thing, is 4%. And then the general government operations is 7%. So, and then they have a category called capital. I honestly don't know what that involves. That's 4%. But there was a study one time that Indiana was in the top 3 states in the nation for the percent we spend on education. There were only 2 states that spent more than us. We were number 3.
So most people wouldn't understand that, or
not from the rhetoric we hear in the media, because schools complain they're underfunded. And of course, you drive by these schools. I mean, you and I live in Hamilton County, and man, the schools we go to are nicer than the private college I went to.
Yeah.
You know, they've got multiple pools, massive football fields. The buildings are amazing. You know, the resources.
And that doesn't even include all the technology and
Right.
everything else that they put inside of those.
Right, which we didn't. We probably don't know what it's like. It was
Exactly.
a lot different than when we were in school.
Our
So,
technology was the phone that you
That's
had in
right.
the office that you could use.
that's what to call mom.
Yeah. Well,
So that's. But there's two other things in the budget that I wanted to mention that we were watching, in addition to see what they were doing on vouchers. One is there's language in the budget for the first time ever that says state tax dollars cannot go to fund the Kinsey Institute, which is a sex research operation down in Bloomington based at IU. And so that's a good public policy statement. That's not something taxpayers want to pay for or should pay for. You know, that IU, I think, has a $4 billion endowment. They can pay for that on their own. Taxpayers shouldn't pay for that. And then the other thing is something I have not talked about. I've been sitting on this all session. I've had several meetings behind the scenes with the speaker, with the head of Ways and Means, with other legislators, key legislators in appropriations and Ways and Means. We got a pilot funding and line item in the budget that I think is very important post Roe v. Wade. It sets up $1 million pilot that can be applied for at the request of a group I'm working with that is trying to set up a pilot in Marion County to help women who are looking for abortion find pro-life resources, maternity care, prenatal care, those types of things. What they've found in their research, and this group does a lot of online search engine work, and so girls who are looking for abortion on their phone, they go to them. They've done this in about 8 different states. And what they found is 73% of the women that they counsel, their nurses and their counselors on this telecare project, when they talk to a woman seeking abortion, they ask a question, and 73% of the girls say, if my circumstances were different, I would have this child. I would not have an abortion. So they don't really want abortion, but they don't know any other way. And so this is trying to flip that so we can say, hey, we can direct you, we can change those circumstances. We can direct you to crisis pregnancy centers, to state resources, to maternity care, to medical care, hoping that they will choose life. And they've been successful in that in other states, and it's worth trying. So we got that in. I've not talked about it because it was a behind-the-scenes thing. But this afternoon, they should vote on the budget with that in the budget.
Well, that's terrific. That's something, sometimes it's better not to say anything
Right.
and make yourself a target.
Right.
To get something through. It's
Right.
kind of one of those strategy plays for those people who are not.
I don't know.
Wondering maybe why wouldn't you want us to support it? Well, there are some select cases where that happens.
Well, and then, you've got a 400-page budget, and there's all sorts of things people try and put in there, and we play that game. But I think post Roe v. Wade, it's important to have as many resources as possible helping women make those choices, seeking abortion, to know there's options for life. And hopefully this program will work. It's a pilot program. If it doesn't work, fine. We tried.
Yeah.
But I think they will. They've been successful in 8 states, and no reason to make a target out of it. So it's in the budget, and the left is complaining about a lot of other things. This probably isn't even on their radar. I mean, there's things that I looked through the budget a couple times. I don't know a fraction what's in there. It's 400 pages long, and a lot of legislators probably don't know either. So, but let me talk about a couple other bills. One bill, Jeff, you and I haven't talked about, I know you know a little bit about this through a lot of the social media work you do. House Bill 1008 passed, and we didn't talk about this a lot, but I count it as a victory. It's a bill that says the state cannot invest in funds based entirely upon what's called ESG.
Yes.
Environmental, social, and governmental, or social justice. Basically, if you think of woke corporations, we don't really want to fund those unless they perform. Now, if the state can justify that this fund performs really well, that's fine. But a lot of states are pouring money in these left-wing corporations because of their political involvement. And this tells the treasurer, do this based on fiscal reasons, not political reasons. And frankly, Treasurer Dan Elliott really wanted this bill because he wants to be make Indiana one of those states that is not funding these things that are undermining our values.
Yeah, you really wonder why would you want taxpayers' dollars not going to the best of the best investments
Right.
of the money, the resources that we've given them.
Yeah.
And those decisions should be made strictly on financial, not on other social issues or, frankly, any other issues.
Well, and too, a lot of these, the E part of it, the environmental side of it, a lot of those companies are green new energy type companies, but they don't like coal, and we're a coal state. I mean, most of our electricity comes from coal-fired plants, and it's not good for Indiana to undermine coal plants when so many Hoosiers rely on cheap electricity through coal.
Another problem is many of those companies, because, a lot of them are new, a lot of them are startups, many of them, once the funding went away from the federal government, actually went bankrupt. And, do we really want to be investing money into companies that financially, if the government should decide to change course, aren't going to make it because, we're putting those tax dollars at risk and we don't want to be doing that.
Yeah, I remember all the solar energy companies that went under after
exactly.
the Obama money went away. So,
the ESG is something where the more we're able to pull away from making decisions based on strictly on ESG, that's a way for us also to battle back against an agenda that is very capital, very anti-free economics. It's something that I think each and every state should be involved, that red states especially should be looking at.
Yep. Another bill, in fact, today, again, I'm recording this on Thursday. When you watch this tomorrow, the session should be over. But I just watched a Rules Committee hearing on House Bill 1447. That's a bill dealing with student data, privacy of student data, and school surveys. But they added to that a language from what we called Senate Bill 12 regarding matter harmful to minors. It sets up a process for complaints in schools and school libraries regarding books that parents might be concerned with that are labeled or could be considered matter harmful to a minor, which is a specific standard. They can't complain about maybe a curse word in a book. This is actually sexually graphic material that is inappropriate for children, gives parents the right to complain about those. It requires the school board to react to those, and it discourages matter harmful to minors in schools. It's a battle we fought for 3 or 4 years, and the Senate finally got the House to work through something. It's a good bill. I think it's not. We would like to have applied to public libraries. Certainly, there's a lot of garbage in public libraries, but in a public library, the parent can be there, can take their child there. A school library, the parent's not around. They aren't there to be oversight for their kids. So, I think it's important that we do this for schools and for parents concerned about a lot of the junk kids are reading in class and literature. The complaint about this was that it would ban certain classic books. Well, I wonder how many schools are teaching the classics anymore. But I can tell you the classics are nothing like the material that these legislators saw that they were reading. That was extremely graphic, heterosexual, homosexual sex, underage sex, adult child sex in these books. I mean, the stuff that was handed out to these legislators, they couldn't read on the internet because it was so obscene. And yet kids are a captive audience in the classroom, and some of them are having to read this in some schools, and that needs to stop. So House Bill 1447 should come up this afternoon on Thursday. And hopefully when you watch this video, you'll probably hear the media freak out when it passes. But that's a good bill. Another good bill, Senate Bill 350. That's already on its way to the governor. This bill prevents a local unit of government from restricting what a pastor or a counselor can say regarding human sexuality. And there were a city or two that have tried to do this, West Lafayette being the most recent. And this bill basically says a local government cannot regulate counselors and pastors more than the state can under licensing law. And so it's a good bill for free speech. And it passed easily in the House and Senate with quite a bit of Democrat opposition, but it's a good bill. And then y'all know about 480 on transgender surgeries. That's on the way to the governor's desk. We'll see what he does with that. On Monday of this week, the House passed House Bill 1608. This is a bill that says schools cannot teach human sexuality of any kind through pre-K through third grade. And Jeff, you're a parent, I'm a parent. I don't know why anybody would be upset with a child not being taught about sex who's 6 years old. I mean, it's just crazy. But there are people who are really upset that schools are not teaching kids. That tells me they have an agenda to indoctrinate kids. Yeah. I mean, why else would you be mad that the school's saying leave this up to the parents to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, it's the parents' role, and traditionally,
Right.
I remember when you were telling me the ages that they were teaching some of this, I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
I think we, in our era, we probably learned it was junior high,
Yeah.
at least.
Yep. Sixth grade,
I
probably.
think in my kids, it was probably closer to sixth or seventh grade, any middle school
Right.
age, and now you're talking about kindergarten.
Right.
I mean, that's just crazy to think that's even appropriate discussion of those issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy to do it at that age.
Yeah, and sadly, our test scores for our national tests show that our kids are behind. About 60% are not where they ought to be in reading or English or science. And so elementary school teachers have a lot to do. This is a distraction for them to teach this. They've got more important things to focus on. And trust me, a child will learn about sex. There's no reason to introduce it to them before they're ready. And frankly, I would like to have seen this gone through fifth grade, not just third. But it's a good step forward. It's interesting, though. It was filed based on the Florida bill that people heard about. Well, Florida's raised their grade up to high school now, where schools can't talk about this.
Yeah.
Because it's really a matter for the home and the parents' values on how you approach this.
Well, and I think most of our audience probably preempted whatever the schools were teaching at whatever time they were, and actually sat down with their kids prior to those taking place, so that the standard could be set in a way that we felt comfortable with. And I mean, that's our part of our role, and that goes back to what you were saying. Being upset with parents having control over when those decisions are made and when they happen. I mean, that is the role of a parent. That is our right as the parent of the child.
Another bill that's on the way to the governor's desk is House Bill 1569. This bill concerns the Department of Corrections, and it says that your tax dollars through the Department of Corrections, that agency will not pay for a prisoner to change their gender. And again, something tax dollars should not be used for. A person in prison shouldn't get a free sex change operation because they're in prison. I mean, it's kind of common sense. It's a good bill. Again, a bit of a missed opportunity, because the question that it raises is, what happens when you have a prisoner who's already transitioned and a biological male wants to be in prison with a female? We really wanted to add to this bill that you have to house prisoners based on their biological sex. And legislators wanted that, but apparently the leadership didn't, in either the House or Senate. I'm not sure who, but they chose not to go that far, which is, again, a tactical discussion. But the left is going to be mad at you anyway. You might as well do the right thing and protect women in prison from men.
Well, we've got plenty of stories to show the dangers.
We do.
It's not like that those in leadership don't have access to that information.
And a lot of Democrats would argue, well, it's not happening here yet. Well, just because it's not happening now doesn't mean it's not going to happen in a few years. Now's the time to pass the law, because once it does happen, the argument is you're taking away people's rights.
Yeah.
So pass the policy now, put it in place, and that's preemptive. And we need to be proactive whenever we can. So, but I'm not convinced it's not happening. I mean, we're hearing stories. Yeah. We know that there's a couple, according to testimony, who are seeking that from the Department of Corrections, and it's very expensive. Taxpayers shouldn't pay hundreds of thousands of dollars of their tax dollars for care of a prisoner and the surgery of a prisoner. So that's probably all we should cover today, Jeff. It's been a really good session.
It's been kind of amazing, hasn't it?
It's surprising. We've probably got 10 different bills that are positive. I want to thank everyone for their calls, the support that they've offered us at AFA, as well as calling your legislators. It's so important to call. And I say call because emails sometimes don't get through. Phone calls do. And it's very important. But as they wrap up the session, this was a good session for family concerns, cultural concerns. The one issue I wish they would have addressed is critical race theory and some of the anti-American things schools are teaching that are really undermining values and harming our republic, because kids grow up hating America. And I frankly think if you're taught America's terrible, that you're not a land of opportunity, no wonder we have mental health problems. What hope do kids have if they think we're this terrible racist nation when we've made corrections and we have so many opportunities? I mean, heaven's sakes, why are millions of people coming here illegally to get here? It's because of the opportunities, and those people are almost all people of color. So if we were that racist, you wouldn't have people from other nations, Hispanics and others, trying to get here. So, but it's a good session, and I appreciate people watching our videos. And then, Jeff, next week we'll be back. We're going to be doing a podcast.
Yeah, this is going to be pretty exciting. You want to tell them, kind of give them a preview of who our first guest is going to be?
A good friend of ours, someone you know, the best editorial cartoonist in the nation from Indiana, Gary Varvel, will be here to talk about the editorial work he does, the writing he does, some of the film work he does. But he's one of the best nationally known editorial cartoonists in the world, if not only here, because his artwork is so good and his captions are good. And so he's going to talk about his faith, about what he does as an editorial cartoonist, how do you become an editorial cartoonist, and he'll have some good stories. We'll show you some of those cartoons. I'm sure you'll recognize his work right away. But Gary will be with us next week.
Can't think of a better way to get started.
No, I couldn't either. That was a good idea on your part.
Yep.
So, well, Jeff, thanks for joining us, and everyone, thank you for watching our videos. I'm Micah Clark, and this is Jeff Howe with our Director of Communications. We'll be back with you next Friday when we start interviewing guests and legislators, and hope you enjoy those videos too. Thank you.